And a good Friday afternoon to you, wherever you may be on the East Coast. Friday morning on the West Coast, 1 o'clock on the East, 10 o'clock on the West. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, September 17th, 2021. Vasi Vada Party, Charlie O, your host here. We are sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino, celebrating 40 years in Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley's longest running British pub and restaurant. Check them out at BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. You can check us out on our social media pages. Our picks and later news and updates all come by 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock on the West Coast. But we do daily picks on the websites and on the Instagrams and social medias and everything. And then when we do our shows, especially the Thursday shows, we have day games, and so we try and get our picks out there before noon Eastern for the day games, especially with baseball going on. With that said, Charlie, how are you? Let's get right to baseball. How about those?
I am great, man. What a packed weekend we've got going now, man.
No doubt about it. We'll get to all the college football and the NFL. We'll talk about the great game last night on Thursday Night Football. But let's start with baseball because we have the Friday football show coming up at 20 minutes after the hour. All right, the National League West, the National League East. Something feels different about those two races, even though they are still races, Charlie. The San Francisco Giants lose yesterday to the San Diego Padres. They're 9 out of their last 11, 9-2, and yet they've lost 2 games in the standings to the Dodgers. The Dodgers are 1 back in the loss column coming into this weekend. Dodgers had the day off yesterday. Padres got to Kevin Gausman to keep their wild card hopes going as well, too. The 7-4 victory over the San Francisco Giants yesterday. As I said, it drops the Giants to 1 game ahead of the Dodgers for the weekend. The Giants will have the Braves coming into town this weekend. We'll talk about the Braves in the National League East in a second. The Dodgers are going to Cincinnati with Walker Buehler tonight. Max Scherzer tomorrow afternoon, I think, and then Sunday morning, West Coast time, Clayton Kershaw. So Cincinnati in the middle of the wild card race. But let's start the National League West, Charlie. Giants, Dodgers, the only race really left in town, and both teams have the best records in baseball.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I know that this is supposed to have national implications because they used to be New York teams. Nobody in New York cares about this, but out here on the West Coast, it's hysteria because these two teams have been rivals ever since they moved out here back in the late 50s and established baseball on the West Coast. And so everybody really excited. No one saw this coming because the Giants at best were predicted to be the third place team in the National League West. And now to have them be the team with the best record in baseball right now, and the two teams being in the position that they're in right now with the Dodgers just being 1 game back in the loss column, is phenomenal. It was interesting to me last night. Vesu, I'd kind of gotten away this season from watching my guys at 538. And I said, wait a minute, what am I doing? Nate Silver, my boys at 538. My boys and girls at 538. What have I not been doing? So I went over and I grabbed last night a look at them to see what they're saying about the playoffs in the World Series. And this is what they're saying. They're saying that the Dodgers have a 52% chance of winning the National League West. This is based on their stat projections, and they say that the Dodgers have a 34% chance of winning the World Series, which is the best projected percentage in all of baseball. They give the Giants a 48% chance of winning the division and an 8% chance of winning the World Series. So, but when you look at that, 52% chance for the Dodgers, 48% chance for the Giants to win the division. So
they came up with that yesterday. That's funny because the other 3 teams are eliminated, so it should be 100%.
Yeah. And as you look down in the National League, coming along, winning their division, obviously the Brewers at 99%. They give the Braves an 80% chance of winning the East. And then as you go to the wild cards, let me see here. I had that available to me, and now my eyes are shrinking. but they really liked the wild card team that they really liked was St. Louis. As we've been projecting as well, they like St. Louis over San Diego. They do not like the numbers on San Diego at all in the direction of San Diego.
Well, it's going to be an interesting weekend in Major League Baseball. The Giants will host the Atlanta Braves for 3 games. Logan Webb, their best pitcher in the second half this year, goes for the Giants. And Ian Anderson, who did not get a start yesterday. We had the Colorado Rockies Atlanta Braves game yesterday morning, West Coast time. That game got postponed. So both starters are going to pitch today. Ian Anderson goes for the Braves tonight, and that helps the Braves rotation because they did not have a starter for Sunday. So with the rain postponement, gave them a day off to able to settle their pitching up. Logan Webb 10-3, 2.80. Ian Anderson has not taken that next step yet. He's got all the stuff, 7-5, 3.61 ERA. Giants cannot take Atlanta lightly because Atlanta's playing for their division as well too. They're 4 up on the Philadelphia Phillies. They're 7 up on the New York Mets for that division. That looks like it's going to be a Braves division. Phillies were down 7-0, looked lifeless yesterday against the Cubs. They came back on the Cubs pitching yesterday. In fact, I have it right here. They came back on the Cubs pitching and scored 7 times in the bottom of the 4th to tie the game at 7. Then they got 3 in the 6th to make it 10-7. Cubs got a home run in the 7th to make it 10-8, and then they get 5 runs in the 7th, 2 runs in the 8th, and make it a 17-8 game. The box score pretty much looks like a pinball machine. As it pops up here, the Phillies, they had 3 RBIs from Herrera, Segura. Harper had 4 RBIs, 2 RBIs for Gregorius and McCutcheon. Home runs galore. Harper his 33rd with 2 on. I think Bryce Harper's home run yesterday, his 33rd of the year, I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly from a couple of weeks ago, is only his 4th home run of the year with men on base because they just don't pitch to him. And that's Bryce Harper. And Bryce Harper, for all the flack he takes, Bryce Harper's still a great player. Bryce Harper's RBIs, he has 33 home runs and 77 RBIs. So that should tell you something about Bryce
and
Harper's
great
production.
What's the adage? A great hitter always has to have a great hitter behind him if you're going to utilize the great hitter. And
right.
they don't have a solid hitter behind him.
Well, they had Rhys Hoskins. He's out for the rest of the year. And then Real Muto has struggled in the second half this year. But the Phillies 4 back in the division race. The wild card races in the National League. I guess we finished on the National League West, right? The Dodgers have the Reds this weekend. The Giants have the Braves. The Braves are trying to hold on in the East to Philadelphia and the Mets as well. Mets had a rough week with the Cardinals. The Cardinals have played well in this last 7 to 10 days. They have moved into the second wild card spot. They are 1 game up on the San Diego Padres, who have won 2 in a row, the last 2 in San Francisco. They're starting to get the bats up because on Monday and Tuesday, they looked lifeless. Even the national media was saying how lifeless the Padres looked. But on Wednesday, they got to the Dominic Leone bullpen opener on Wednesday night. And then yesterday, they took a 2-0 lead early on Kevin Gausman. Giants bats were struggling. They finally got going a little bit later in the game. But the Padres, Tommy Pham had a big game yesterday for the Padres. They are 1 back of St. Louis. And by the way, coincidentally, or not coincidentally, I guess the schedule makers, we bashed them all year. Apparently, they got it right this week because the Cardinals are playing the Padres this weekend in St. Louis for a 3-game series. San Diego 1 game back in the wild card race there. In fact, that's the one I wanted to go to here. 7 up on the Mets. St. Louis jumps to the second wild card. 1 up on San Diego. 2 up on Cincinnati, who host the Dodgers this weekend. 3 up on Philadelphia. And 6 up on the Mets. And, oh, by the way, the Phillies and the Mets are playing this weekend in New York, too. And that's a rivalry as well, too. So now we've got 5 series, St. Louis, San Diego, LA, Cincinnati, New York, Philadelphia, all head-to-head. 2 division leaders are playing each other, the Braves and the Giants. We already talked about LA and Cincinnati, and these are the 5 wildcard teams that are going at it. The Dodgers are the 6th wildcard team in that scenario, but they've already clinched the playoff spot. So here we are in the National League, Charlie. That wildcard scenario between San Diego and St. Louis going to be very exciting. Cincinnati only 2 back. They finally broke their 4-game losing streak at Pittsburgh with a 1-0 victory yesterday. Philadelphia came back, as we said, on the Cubs. They're 3 back in the wild card behind St. Louis. They had a tough time with St. Louis early in the year. So a 5-game scenario with Major League Baseball is they group A, B, C, D, and E, and the top head-to-head round robin winner will get the bye, and then B and C will play each other, D and E will play each other, and then those winners will figure out how to play the team that will have the bye. If we end up in a 5-way tie, I read it on MLB.com last night. There's 5 teams in the American League as well too. So let's take the next couple minutes here and break down the wild card. Charlie, let's start at St. Louis and San Diego.
Well, I think it's really to the advantage of St. Louis that they're at home in that series. A couple of reasons. One is they play very well at home, and that's an advantage for them right there. And number 2, they play well at home because of the weather. San Diego used to that really nice, balmy 72 degrees, and now they're going to go to St. Louis in September where it's going to feel like it's 1,000 degrees because of the heat and the humidity and everything else. So it's going to be home field advantage just because of the weather. But also St. Louis always plays well at home, and it's going to be a chance for St. Louis. All they need to do is take 2 out of 3 this weekend, and they can open up a little bit of breathing room for them. By the way, 40% chance. 538 says that the Cardinals have it to win that wild card spot, and they give the Padres a 22% chance of taking that. So they also believe that this weekend is going to be huge for the Cardinals. In that Phillies-Mets series, again, a 2 out of 3 series win for the Phillies, and I think basically that's it for the Mets. They're done. They're toast because they're already 5 back in the loss column. They're 3 back behind the Phillies. You take a couple more losses off of that, and I don't think they can recover. So a big series for the Phillies there to try to keep them into the thing as well. And I think they're very capable of doing that because who knows what the Mets are? The Mets don't know what the Mets are. We've talked about that for a long time. And I'm just talking about the Mets on the field. I'm not talking about the hot messes, what's off, because at this time of the year, what's going on in the front office, that doesn't make any difference to what's going on in the field. But the Mets don't know who the Mets are. So I think that the Phillies can take advantage of that right now and go to work on that. Cincinnati, poor Cincinnati. They drew. Let me tell you,
they drew the short end of the straw. Is that what you're saying?
They drew the low card here. They just drew the. They went bust at the blackjack table because they drew the Dodgers. I was reading as a matter of fact, I was reading on 538. 538 said this Dodgers team is a team that has too many stars. And they didn't mean that to be funny. They just said they have so many stars. Where do you play everybody?
Right.
They're just so loaded up. And they said, not only do they have too many stars, but they can afford everybody that they've gotten. They've managed their payroll so well that they just have so many stars. What do you do with all these guys? And so they're just so loaded right now with talent. And it's going to be very tough for Cincinnati to stand up against them. And then they're playing in the bandbox. So you give the power that the Dodgers possess as well in the bandbox there at Great American Ballpark. It's going to be a long weekend for the Reds.
We'll get all the baseball lines at the end of the program. We'll talk about the games for the weekend. We're mentioning the series.
And by the way, if you think I'm a Reds hater,
no Reds haters. We're not haters here. We're just haters of losing games. That's all we are doing right now. By the way, Vinny Velasquez gets released by the Phillies a couple of days ago. Padres need starting pitching. He's starting tonight for the Padres against Miles Mikolas. Adam Wainwright's had a resurgence year. He goes Saturday for the Cardinals against the Padres. Yu Darvish goes Saturday for the Padres as well. And then Sunday to be determined for St. Louis. It may not make a difference. Zach Wheeler, the former Met, goes up against the Mets tonight. What a year he's had. He should be getting some Cy Young votes amongst everybody else. Taijuan Walker, who started off great, is now 7-9 with a 4.29 ERA. He goes for the Mets tonight. They need a little offense. Cincinnati has Castillo. LA has Buehler. And then the Giants have Webb, and the Braves have and then the Braves have
to do that.
Absolutely. Tight pants Buehler and Ian Anderson tonight. All right, let's move on to the American League real quick here. Tampa Bay Rays, we talk about them all the time, can name 3 guys on that team. 91-56. They had to have an opener last night. Luis Head pitched for Tampa Bay pitched 1 inning, and then the rest of their bullpen came in. Their magic number is 8 over the Yankees and Toronto in the American League East to win that division. I can't see them not winning the division now. It'll be very hard for them to lose it. They have Detroit for 3 more games. They got a 5-2 victory, and they pitched really well. They got key hitting when they needed it. Mike Zunino, the 21st century catcher version of analytics, 219 with 32 home runs for the Tampa Bay Rays. By the way, Salvador Perez hit his 45th for Kansas City. He should get some MVP votes as well. Tampa Bay Rays in the American League East, 8 is their magic number. The White Sox lose 2 out of 3 to the Angels, but their magic number is 7 over Cleveland. They have a 10-game lead over the Indians. And Houston, the magic number is still a little high there at 10, but they have a 7-game lead. I think it's 7-game lead on
yes, 7 games.
7-game lead on the A's and 8 on the Mariners. That division should be pretty much wrapped up. They've won 7 out of 10. They won 12-1 last night. They ripped up on Glen Otto and the Texas Rangers last night. They have hit the run differential of plus 200. So they and the Dodgers are the only 2 teams over 200 runs in run differential. The Dodgers at a whopping 244. The Giants at 181. The White Sox at 133. The Toronto Blue Jays at 175. And even though the Rays don't have the prototypical home run hitters or guys that drive in runs, the big names, they are at plus 172 in the run differential. So the division race is pretty much settled. Here's where we get the wild card scenarios, Charlie. 5 teams still involved in the wild card, and not just for the second spot, for both spots right now. Toronto and Boston are tied in the game's back standings. Toronto has 1 less win than Boston does, but the most important column is they have 1 less loss than Boston does. They are 1 game ahead of Boston in that wild card scenario for the top spot. Boston and the Yankees are actually tied in the loss column, but the Yankees, by virtue of 1 less win, they are out of it by a half a game. 65 losses for both Boston and New York. They're even. Oakland is 2 back after taking 2 out of 3 from Kansas City. Could have swept them that first game. They gave up that lead in the first game. That would have been another game to pick up on the Red Sox or the Yankees, who struggled with Baltimore this week. In fact, they lost to Baltimore yesterday afternoon, our time, on a wild pitch to tie the game, and then a 10th inning single by the Orioles in the bottom of the 10th to give the Yankees a hard time last night. But Oakland, 2 back in the loss column. Seattle still 3 back. The weekend games are scheduled like this. Boston does not have a starting pitcher yet, but Boston, Baltimore this weekend in Fenway. Toronto, Minnesota, Hyun-Jin Ryu and Michael Pineda in Toronto. The Yankees are going to, the Cleveland Indians are going to face their old teammate Corey Kluber tonight in Yankee Stadium. Cleveland pretty much on the outside looking in now, but the Yankees are right there. The Oakland A's are going to go into Anaheim tonight. That game on YouTube tonight, by the way, so don't look for it on your local channels. The Angels do not have a starting pitcher as Ohtani got scrubbed from his start. He may not pitch the rest of the year based on what Joe Madden was saying. And why should he pitch the rest of the year? They're not playing for anything right now anyway. And Chris Flexen has been the best pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. They're going into a Kansas City Royals team since the All-Star break, has the 5th best record in the American League, even though they lost the last 2 to the Oakland A's. Seattle still has a shot at only 3 back, 2 back in the loss column of the Red Sox and the Yankees, both at 65 losses. Charlie, let's take the AL wildcard.
Well, I think you can stop at the Mariners. Everybody else underneath them.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Thanks for coming to play the game. Bring guys up from AAA and enjoy the rest of the season. Sell some souvenirs. But you look at everything else right now, Vasu. If you made me go to the window and start putting money down on who's going to the wild card, I'd have to put money down on the Jays, Sox, and Yankees. I'm an Oakland A's fan, and I would love to say, hey, the A's are going to make it in. They're too inconsistent. The starting pitching is up and down. The relief pitching is up and down. Their run scoring, where early in the season they had such a big plus run differential, it just keeps coming down. I don't like where they're going at all. Seattle, I'm so impressed with what they've done all season long. But again, bullpen, I just don't think it's strong enough. And I think they made their run. I think they made their run up just a little too late. So right now, if you made me put money down, I would say that both wild cards are coming out of the East. Who those 2 teams are, I'm saying Toronto is there for sure. between the other two teams, flip a coin.
It really is coin flipping right now because both teams are all Yankees and Red Sox are only a game back of Toronto, who hold the one spot in the American League wild card. By the way, let me say this about Oakland and Seattle before we wrap up the baseball segment and get to our Friday football show here. Don't forget Nick Robinson coming on, our intern, at 10:45. And we'll have all the NFL and NCAA after the break. But let me say this about Oakland and Seattle as we close out the baseball. Oakland's going to play LA this weekend. If they can handle their business against the Angels and somehow get a sweep, Seattle goes into Kansas City, somehow gets a sweep. Don't pitch to Salvador Perez, by the way, if you want to. But anyway, the point is, if they somehow can sweep and Boston has some trouble with Baltimore, Cleveland is not bad. They can give the Yankees trouble. The Yankees are inconsistent. Minnesota has scored runs the last few weeks. They've beaten some pretty good teams. Right now, Hyun-Jin Ryu is pitching for the Blue Jays tonight. But as we look at it, the Oakland A's and Seattle Mariners, if they can have business this weekend and these other top three teams stumble, here's the scenario that starts Monday night in Oakland. Seattle goes to Oakland on Monday night for a 3-game series in Oakland where they don't have a lot of luck in their history. But if the top three teams stumble in Boston and Toronto and New York and the A's and Seattle can sweep this weekend, all of a sudden that 5-team race really does become a 5-team race because the Mariners and Oakland will play each other Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I think it's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday only. I don't think it's a 4-game series, but that's the scenario we have in the American League. Lots of things to talk about. We'll have our picks at 6 Eastern for tonight for Major League Baseball. But when we come back in 30 seconds, it is the Friday football show. Week 2 of the NFL, week 4 of college football. A lot to talk about. We'll talk about the game from last night. We'll preview all the games this weekend in detail. Nick Robinson will come on with his unique angle of player props and sports wagering from his angle, from the younger generation angle, I should say. Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by Britannia Arms. We will be back in 30 seconds with the Friday football show. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, September 17th, 2021. Mid-September already. Week 2 for the NFL, week 4 for college football. Actually, week 3 officially because they have a week 0, but week 3 officially for college football. We had a game last night, Ohio U. And what did happen in that Ohio U game last night, by the way? Did you cover? I know you had that game. You took plus 19.
I don't believe that I did. In fact, I was just going back to look and see what I did last night. I did not cover. It was 49-14 was the final in that one.
Ohio U. That was Lafayette that played. So Louisiana Lafayette. They had
Lafayette Raging Cajuns.
Raging Cajuns. They did have that tough game against Texas. They were a top 25 team coming in. All right. Make the Money and Run podcast brought to you by Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Celebrating 40 years, Silicon Valley's longest serving British pub and restaurant for food and drink. Check them out for your football weekends. Check them out during the week. You can also have them cater to your organizational party, or they can set up your group event inside the complex itself. 408-252-7262 when you're in the Bay Area, or check them out on the web, BritanniaArmsDeanza.com. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 3 Eastern on Mondays, noon Eastern on Thursdays, 1 Eastern on Fridays. And also, but check out our social media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. 6 o'clock Eastern, we'll have our picks and the latest news. 2 baseball games do not have starting pitch right now, so we'll have that news updated by 6 o'clock along with our Friday picks. On Saturday, we'll have our picks by 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern, and on Sunday, we'll have them picked by noon Eastern for the NFL on Sunday. All right, all the traffic out of the way now. Let's get to the NFL. Let's start last night with the game. The first 2 Thursdays have been pretty good games. The Washington football team did not cover, much to my chagrin, but the New York Giants looked like the better team anyway, even though the football team ended up winning the game 30-29. The final score, Dustin Hopkins on his second chance, a 48-yard field goal to win it for the football team. Washington now 1-1, the Giants 0-2. Daniel Jones looked really good. Saquon Barkley, I almost, at our 6 o'clock update, at our 6 o'clock social update, Charlie, I almost changed my pick to the Giants when I saw Saquon Barkley was activated, because he really draws a lot of attention to himself, and that opened up the passing lane for Daniel Jones, who also ran the ball well. Shepard caught the ball. Galladay made an unbelievable catch. Slayton had a touchdown pass. The football team could not cover them defensively. The front four did not get to Daniel Jones with all the pressure that they're hyped up to be. They had to bring blitzers in to get to him when they did get to him. It was an interesting football game last night, Charlie.
Yeah, it really was. And you mentioned the fact that the football team did not cover the spread. They did make the money line, and the over was covered last night. So it was an interesting game from that standpoint. Yeah, what was supposed to be kind of a game turned out to be a really interesting game. Daniel Jones last night played a much better game than what we anticipated. He was 22 for 32 for 249 yards. That is a little better than what we're expecting from him. Everybody beats him up. Everybody beats him up. And he hasn't had much of a supporting cast. First of all, you would expect that, Saquon would be a big part of helping him be what he needed to be. And he hasn't been there. And now it looks like Barkley's going to be there. I mean, Saquon didn't have a big night last night. What did he have? 57 yards on 13 rushes.
But he drew a lot of attention.
But that's what I'm saying. Just even in that, he drew a lot of attention, which really helps Jones back there, because it just gives him a little more time, because they've got to watch Saquon. So that was helpful. I mean, and then passing for the football team, they were 34 for 46, and I'm going, really, a Washington team passing that much?
He looked good. I mean,
I
liked him better than Fitzpatrick anyway, and he looked good last night. Made some good throws. Made the terrible throw at the end. Toward the end, I thought maybe there was a chance they'd go down and get a touchdown to cover the spread, but clearly with that little time left and everybody using their timeouts, it was going to end up being a field goal game. The only way that I thought could have happened was if they blocked the first go-ahead field goal on Graham Gano. By the way, Graham Gano, if you have him in fantasy football, he's only made 34 in a row, and his 55-yarder could have been good from 65 last night. All the field goals that he hit, they're right down the – I mean, if my golf shots were as straight as his kicks right down the middle, I would be, I'm over 50, so I would be on the senior tour right now if I could hit him that straight. There's no doubt in my mind that he and Justin Tucker right now are the two best kickers in the NFL, because I love Justin Tucker. But it was an interesting game last night. Daniel Jones, the Giants had a lot of chances to score more points, and I think that game was really theirs to win. Too many penalties, the offsides penalties at the end of the game, both of them, that hurt. But they had other chances to score. Daniel Jones ran for the touchdown score, but it was called back. They had to settle for a field goal after the holding call on the outside by the wide receiver, so they had to settle for a field goal there too as well. The football team had chances to score too. They started off slow, but they ended up moving the ball. Antonio Gibson, a really good running back. I forgot he was a wide receiver in college, but he's a tough runner on the inside. And then Terry McLaurin is turning into a star. There's no doubt that he's turning into a star right now. But that front four has to get more pressure. They didn't get a lot of pressure on Justin Herbert last week, and he burned him at the end of the game with a game-winning touchdown. And they could have been burned this week if not for the miraculous comeback by the football team to go down the field and able to get the field goal, the personal foul, the two offsides calls, everything that happened, that was the confluence of the Giants going bad. By the way, the Giants covering last night adds to our stats for the year for parity or competitiveness. The underdog now is 13 of its first 17. I'm sorry, 12-4, 13 of its first 17 games this year. So 4-13 are the favorites this year. So the Giants covered, and add that to that strength. So start looking at those underdogs, because some of these point spreads for the first 3 or 4 weeks are still going to be inflated. And you got to think that the underdogs, and this is the NFL, it is hard to cover in the NFL. And those that wager know that that's the case. And you look at some of these point spreads right here on the bottom of our screen, as this is the Friday football show with Vasi Vadaparty, Charlie O, part of the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, September 17th. The New Orleans Saints, as I look at it, the New Orleans Saints are going to Carolina, coming off a big victory last week against the Green Bay Packers. They're a 3.5-point favorite at Carolina, 44.5. Charlie, Cleveland 13 against Houston, 48. Cleveland had a chance to beat Kansas City last week, did not. My Bears are favored. I was a little surprised, although I'm not surprised. It's a low point spread. They are at home. They get the Cincinnati Bengals, who almost lost to Minnesota last week after having a built-up lead against the Vikings. But they get the Bears this week on the road. The Bears are 2-45. Pittsburgh coming off their road win against Buffalo. They have the Raiders this week, who won in overtime on Monday night. We all saw how that game ended on Monday night. They have the Raiders both at 1-0, 5.5, 47. Buffalo goes on the road. They're going to Miami. Miami 1-0. They beat New England on the road last week. They're 3.5-point favorites, 47.5. The Rams 3.5 and 48. They're going to Indianapolis. San Francisco in their injured secondary, 3 at Philadelphia, 50 the total there. Denver is going to – where's Denver going to? Denver's a 6-point favorite. They are going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 45.5. New England 6 at the Jets, 42. Arizona seems kind of low at 3.5. They've got the Vikings, considering how bad they demolished the Titans last week. They're at home, 3.5 and 51. Tampa Bay 13 over Atlanta, 52. Seattle a 6-point favorite against those Titans, 54 the total there. That could be a pinball machine. The Chargers are hosting the Cowboys, 3.5, 55.5. That could be a pinball machine. Mm-hmm. Kansas City on Sunday night goes to Baltimore, where Patrick Mahomes is still undefeated and hasn't thrown a September interception in his career. The Ravens 0-1 after the overtime loss in Vegas, have the home game against the Chiefs Sunday night. And then Monday night, the Packers, after their whooping of the New Orleans Saints on the road in Jacksonville, get the Detroit Lions, who are 0-1. Offensively, Detroit really good, but an 11-point favorite, 48 the total on Monday night. Charlie, where do you want to start with the NFL?
Well, first of all, I want to start with the Monday night game. And the reason I want to start with the Monday night game is because being out in Northern California, I want to tell you what Northern California fans are doing. They are rooting for the Green Bay Packers, and they are rooting for the Green Bay Packers to absolutely rout Detroit. The reason they're doing that is because in week 3, in the home opener for the 49ers, they have the Green Bay Packers, and they do not want the Packers to come in 0-2 because they know at that point the Packers will be so stinking angry and fired up that it could be a very, very tough home opener for the 49ers. So they are really rooting for the Packers to just get fired up and to just take care of business against the Packers, which, by the way, I think they will do. I think that it's been a very, very hard week for Aaron Rodgers because he may have been Mr. Nonchalant and, hey, we got business taken care of and everything else. But I have a feeling it was an ice cold locker room for him all week long. And on the practice field, I have a feeling every time he walked by some of the veterans, they were going, you better take care of business. You better take care of business. You're in Green Bay. Because those veterans who have been around him, they don't mince words. They don't care what he makes. They don't care what he does. It's all about winning.
Fascinated by the Rams-Colts game this weekend. Matthew Stafford looked great against the Bears. Bears defense was not very good. Bears have Cincinnati, as I said, this weekend. They're going to face another good quarterback in Joe Burrow. But the Rams and the Colts, Rams going to Indianapolis. Indianapolis lost to Seattle last week. Defensively, the Colts did not stand up to Russell Wilson. Not a lot of teams have stood up to Russell Wilson, but that was an opening week where Russell Wilson just went off for 4 touchdowns. Here's Stafford coming in with a 3.5-point favorite for the Rams, 48 the total for the game. Carson Wentz at quarterback had an okay game for Indianapolis. Hines actually had a pretty good game at running back. Jonathan Taylor did not run as well as he could have based on last year's stats that he had. But the Colts were in the game with Seattle for a little bit. Can they be in the game with the Rams for week 2, Charlie, as they open up against 2 NFC West teams?
Well, I wouldn't bet that they can't be in the game. And I think they can be in the game in part because they're going to be at home. And that certainly is going to be helpful to them because the Lucas Oil Stadium is a nice home field advantage. That crowd there in Indiana is a big home field advantage for that team, even when they're doing poorly. So I think that'll be helpful to them, and they're going to be fired up after the team got their first victory. I think it'll be a nice test for the Rams after they got the big home victory over the Bears. It'll be a nice test for them on the road. if just a gut initial feeling without really going in depth on the numbers at this point would be if I'm laying money on this game, I'm laying my money on the Rams because I just think they are a more talented team, and I was so impressed with Stafford in that game on Monday night. Man, to see him with his skill, and we've always known he's had skills. I mean, no one ever doubted
I
his
love
skill.
Matthew Stafford.
Even in Detroit, at their worst, we always said this guy is so skilled and so talented. But to see him have an opportunity to perform with other talent on the field, man, it would be hard. I would be hard pressed not to put my money down on them.
The other NFC West team we'll talk about here, the Arizona Cardinals, are 3.5-point favorites against the Minnesota Vikings, who played themselves to a tie and into an overtime loss. The first game ever in NFL history where a game-tying field goal at 0-0-0 on the clock and a game-winning field goal at 0-0 on the clock ever happened in the NFL. The Bengals are 1-0 after beating the Vikings. The Vikings came in as a 3-point favorite last week. They're only a 3.5-point. And I say only because I saw Arizona whoop up on Tennessee in Tennessee last week, and Minnesota did not look all that impressive. 51 the total. Can Minnesota's defense stop this offense of Arizona right now? Because right now, after one game, Arizona's offense is right there in the top three.
No. And if 2 weeks ago, if you had asked me that, I would have said maybe. But man, after what Arizona did last Sunday to Tennessee,
and defensively too, stopping Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'd say no. I've looked at a lot of different analysis sites for betting and stats and everything else, and man, everybody's saying this is a game you should bet. All of the analysis sites are saying this is a game that has all kinds of win potential in this game. They like Arizona minus the 3.5. They think that's a good one there with that. They think this game is probably, they think it's going to go over the 50.5, and they like Arizona on the money line minus 195. So everything that everybody is going right now is swinging towards the Cardinals. And again, Kingsbury, very smart for taking out the for sale sign in the front yard of his house. So, because, they all had him fired. Had him fired. I mean, wasn't that the talk? That Absolutely. Was all the talk going into preseason, after all the way through preseason was there's going to be a new coach in Arizona. Where's all that talk now?
Wow, it's all in one game. We'll see what happens. If Minnesota comes in and beats them, then it'll be something different. All right, wrapping up the NFC West here. Wrapping up the NFC West, Seattle is at home against those Tennessee Titans. 6-point favorite, 54 the total. Can Tennessee play bad 2 games in a row? Seattle's defense is not great, and they have not stopped the run in about 2.5 years. And now Derrick Henry is mad, probably after only 40 yards rushing, somewhere in that neighborhood of yards rushing. Don't have the total in front of me. Ryan Tannehill, not a bad quarterback. Julio Jones, maybe feeling the pressure in game 1 with a new team. A.J. Brown there, Ferkser, the tight end. He's been hurt. He may not play. He's my backup tight end on my fantasy team, so I'll have that news on Sunday morning. But 6 points, maybe a lot for Tennessee, because Seattle traditionally after big wins, they come out and play flat in their next games, and their defense is not great. Indianapolis did move the ball on them up and down. Granted, Indianapolis was at home. But Tennessee, I'm kind of leaning toward the 6 points here on Tennessee. Not to mention the underdogs are 13-4 in the NFL.
And a lot of books have moved that to 6.5.
Yeah.
Well, and the over-under right now is at 54.
Right.
So it's is a game where you've got numbers moving on it now because of the money that's flowing. And yeah, I don't think this is a game that Seattle can pocket at all. And you're right. I think the anger factor for Tennessee. I don't think Derrick Henry is going to have 2 bad games in a row, and that's going to factor in to the situation. So that's going to be one that's going to be there as well. That is going to play into this. We always suspect Seattle's defense, so that's another one right there. And everybody that I've looked at is saying, yeah, this may not be a good investment game, just because of that. If you're going to play this game, all the advice that I've been seeing, and one of the things I try to do is report advice as well, not just my own advice. Everybody's saying if you're going to play this game, this is not a big unit game. If you're a Seattle fan, and I know there are a ton of Seahawks fans out there, this is a small unit game for you because it's iffy. It really is iffy. If they're your team, and I understand you always want to play your team, small units. This is a quarter unit game, not a full unit game.
Let's move on to the AFC East here. Only one team won last week. That was Miami Dolphins. They host the Buffalo Bills this weekend. The Bills 3.5, 47.5. Buffalo's won 5 straight games versus Miami, scoring 30-plus points in each of those games. Miami played great defense against New England. Granted, Mac Jones, rookie quarterback, they kind of showed different looks to him. Tagovailoa had himself a pretty good game. They ran the ball pretty well on New England. Not really shocking that they went into New England and beat them. I like them going into the week at plus 3.5 last week, but here they are plus 3.5 at home. And we all know about home dogs, but this is a Buffalo team that did not look good in the second half against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I got a feeling that this may be a different scenario going in. And then the Jets are going to play New England with their rookie quarterback, Mac Jones, a 6-point favorite at New York against Zach Wilson, 42 the total. The Jets look good in the second half against Carolina. I'll be interested to see if the Jets' second half team is the team that we're going to see through the year or the first half team that's going to be inconsistent for the first few weeks because, Belichick will get that team ready for Sunday, but a 6-point favorite on the road again, Charlie.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that Buffalo-Miami game first. I'm really interested to see how Buffalo comes out of the chute because I thought their attitude after that loss was horrible. Allen comes out and says, well, sometimes after a loss, you learn more after the loss. And it kind of motivates us to work on some things that we might not have worked on after the loss. You just came out of
Who's that? Casey Stengel? Who's that? Casey Stengel speaking?
Yeah. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? You should come out there saying we're ashamed of ourselves. And we gotta buck it up right now. We can't come out and play that way. I want to see some anger. I want to see, hey, we're upset. We're not going to play this way. That's what you got to look for. So, I think that's somewhat reflected. I think it's reflected on two things. Miami's playing already better ball than what we thought it was going to be. And I think that also is reflected at the total is only 47.5 in this game. And a lot of people are recommending the under on that. But
it's hard to take unders in the NFL these days.
Oh man, I got to tell you, let me go on the record. I took the under in that stinking game last night because I liked the defense in Washington. And what did I do? I lost. Yeah. Okay, let me go right on the record. I looked at it, I statted it out, spreadsheeted it, did all the right things, and I lost because I went under. And it's just you said it. It's hard to go. Anyway, I think that's going to be an interesting game. The New England game, I don't know. New England and the Jets. The Jets are the Jets. I think they're improved. I think they will continue to improve. I love Robert Saleh. He's a good coach. He will be the coach. I'm going on record right now. He is the coach that will turn the Jets around. The problem is he's going up against Belichick. And Belichick already is showing me that with Mac Jones, Belichick didn't send Cam Newton away because he didn't believe in Mac. He says, let's just flip a coin and we'll go with Mac Jones because it'll be kind of fun to try a rookie quarterback. No, he believes in Mac Jones. So I don't know that I like the -6, but I do think that it'll be a New England win.
This will be a good game. This will be a good game for the Jets. They're at home, their first home game with their new quarterback. It'll be interesting to see. All right, the NFC South. I want to see how Carolina plays in week 2, if the Jets are for real or not, because Carolina did play them to a low-scoring game, and the Saints are coming in off that big high from last week. This is their officially first road game, even though they played in Jacksonville. And then Tampa Bay has Atlanta, and I think Atlanta is going to be the worst of the 4 there. So I'll be interested to see in the NFC South. Other games before we go to break here and bring in our intern real quick, Nick Robinson. He's going to talk about his unique ways of wagering player props and et cetera. Also, he'll probably give some Oregon love to as well, too. He's a student at the University of Oregon. Cowboys-Chargers will be interesting Sunday afternoon to see Justin Herbert, see how Dak Prescott responds after his week 1 opening Thursday. They had 10 days off as well. Bears-Bengals, Lions-Packers, and then the Vikings and the Cardinals are the NFC North as well, too. All right, keep checking our social media. We'll have all our picks. We'll have further analysis on the NFL and the NCAA as well, too. But when we come back in 30 seconds on the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by Britannia Arms, celebrating 40 years, check them out at BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. On the other side of the break, Nick Robinson, our intern Nick Robinson. We're going to talk college football. We're going to break down the conferences as we wind down the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, September 17th, 2021. Back in 30 with the college football outlook for the weekend. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays right here on YouTube and Facebook Live. I want to shout out Frank for making the comment. He's going to go see the Giants Padres in San Diego next week. A big series for him, so go enjoy yourself, Frank. Download, subscribe, rate, and review anywhere you get your podcast. Don't forget we have daily updates by 6 Eastern on our social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You see all the addresses there as well, too. And we're going to have further analysis of the NFL games this whole weekend, the college games as well, too. And Britannia Arms celebrating 40 years in Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley's longest-serving British pub and restaurant, BritanniaArmsDeanza.com. All right, you see on the screen right there, we're going to start with the Pac-12 as we have our intern, Nick Robinson, his unique aspects of wagering and wagering on players and wagering on props. But he's got to be very happy, Charlie, as we welcome in intern Nick Robinson, the University of Oregon. 14.5-point underdogs into Ohio State. Go into Ohio State and beat them 35-28. All right, Nick, welcome in as always for your Friday segment. Let's start with that game. As a student of the school, why don't you give me a minute on that before we get to your player props and what you're looking at this weekend?
Well, thanks for having me on, guys, as always. And what a game, first off, I can say. I don't want to talk too much about Oregon because, man, I could go on for hours and hours about that game. But
you got a minute.
I was actually in Vegas for the game, and there were a bunch of Ohio State fans, but I knew we were going to pull this one away the whole time. Our offensive line looked fantastic. C.J. Verdell looked so springy, and he was running all over the field. Anthony Brown looked fantastic, too, on the RPO and everything. So even without 2 of our top defensive players and even maybe one arguably the best in the nation in Kayvon Thibodeau, we still came out with the win. And I think this will help our college playoff hopes, obviously. And even with Kayvon in the game, I think we'll be even better. So it's great to see us come out with a win against Ohio State. I think that might turn into a small rivalry, even though they're not in the Pac-12. But hopefully in the future we can get a couple more games against them, maybe one at home. But, man, what a win. I was very happy and very, very, very proud of our guys.
All right, Charlie and I will break down the conferences in a little bit. Oregon, by the way, has Stony Brook this weekend on the Pac-12 network, 4:30 on the West Coast time, not even on the board. So a little bit of a different scenario than Ohio State in the horseshoe for Oregon this weekend. All right, Nick, what do you got in terms of player props and what you're looking at from your viewpoint of wagering and the sports angle?
Perfect. So for player props this weekend, I'm loving a couple on Sunday. First, I'm going to absolutely attack this Denver Jags game. We saw last week that the Jags are absolutely a pathetic team. I don't think Urban Meyer can just rally his team like he did in college. So first off, I'm going with Broncos -6, but I'm also going to parlay that with a couple player props. I'm attacking the ground game for Denver. We saw what they did against the Giants, who actually played pretty well against the run last night, and Denver still ran all over them. So for my first one, which is one of my favorites of the week, is Javonte Williams over 46 rushing yards. I think he'll get at least 16 carries in this game. And he looked pretty springy last week. Not the best, but he also out-touched Melvin Gordon, who also pretty much had one big run. So Javonte Williams over 46 at even odds is fantastic value. And also a Javonte Williams touchdown at +175. I think that can happen. I just think Denver's going to dominate the trenches, and their offensive line's too good for the Jags' defensive line.
All right, let's educate some of the viewers and listeners here on the podcast and on Facebook and YouTube. How do you go into your every week? We're going to start promoting different things that you like to look at in terms of player props, because this is a new way of wagering these days for player props and in-game betting, live betting. All that stuff has been taking place the last few years. So what kind of things do you look for when you go into a weekend for player props and futures or whatever else you're looking at? Go ahead.
Exactly. So usually I like to play against matchups. Sometimes people see star players and see like their low reception totals or receiving yards totals, and they immediately go towards that and they think it'll hit because usually star players perform the best. But in my opinion, I think matchups are crucial. You got to look at what happened last week, injuries, who's replacing, say a cornerback went down and their replacement hasn't really played that much, maybe attack that matchup. So you just got to look and see which matchups are the best and attack those plus value matchups. I think that's the best way to do it.
Go ahead, Charlie. Got anything for Nick?
Yeah, Nick, I also noticed that you don't necessarily in your props take the most well-known player. And I find that interesting. So you do some deep dives on this. Exactly.
So what I think is very important is to find those players that are going to break out in a few weeks. And you see maybe they're not stars and the books don't have them at such a high rushing total, or their totals aren't as high because they're not as well known yet. Maybe they're splitting work, such as Javonte Williams, who if he was a workhorse and getting 20 touches a game, that total would be at least 80 yards against one of the worst defenses in the league. So I just think, like I said before, attacking those matchups, it's not always about putting the stars out there. It's about looking to see who has the best value of the week and the worst defenses, and maybe slot receivers. If you know that slot corner didn't have the best game last week, you got to attack it. Even if it's such a player like Cole Beasley, he may not be the most valued player and you don't think he's going to go off, but I think he's pretty set to have 5 to 6 receptions per game. And usually his total is set at 5. So I think just attacking those value picks, it's not always about going for the stars, but just looking at the matchups and seeing, oh, this player is very undervalued. I think that's the best way to hit it.
Cool. All right, let's hit the conferences while we have Nick on as well too. The ACC, we'll have UCF Louisville tonight, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, the best game of the conference there. Michigan State, Miami tomorrow night, Georgia Tech, Clemson, Virginia, North Carolina will be an interesting game on Saturday night as well too. So what are you looking at, Nick, in the ACC?
So I love North Carolina. They looked pretty good. I know they had a little blunder one game, but I don't think Virginia is as good as they're set out to be. And at home, I think North Carolina can really rally behind the crowd and beat this -8 spread. And also, I'm going on Wake Forest -4.5. Florida State doesn't look too good, and Wake Forest looked pretty good. And I think they can cover at home as well, this -4.5.
All right, Charlie, hit your big game here in the ACC before we move on here, as we're running out of time.
I don't have an ACC big game. Well, I shouldn't say that. You know what? I'm looking at that. I haven't made a final decision, but I'm looking at that Miami-Michigan State game pretty closely. And I have to tell you at this point, I'm leaning Michigan State in that game. I think they're giving an awful lot of credence to a Miami team, to me, that had trouble last week with Appalachian State. And Appalachian State, I mean, they're a good medium level team, but Miami should have run all over them, and they didn't do it. My only concern here I go, Mr. Weatherman. My only concern is you got a team coming out of Michigan that's going to Miami, and it's going to be 88 degrees at kickoff, and it's going to be humid as all get out. And stamina is going to be a problem for the Spartans. So that's what I'm weighing back and forth. But right now, if you made me take my money and put it down, it would go on the Spartans.
All right, Big 12 conference and non-conference matchup. Boise State hosting Oklahoma State, 3-point favorite there. The total at 57.5. Nevada is a favorite at Kansas State. Kansas State whooped up on Stanford. Stanford whooped up on USC. And Kansas State 2-0. Nevada looks pretty good in their matchups that they've had. And then Oklahoma 22.5 against the Nebraska team. Seems kind of low to me. The former Big 12 matchup, now Big 10, Big 12 matchup. Oklahoma 22.5. Nick, that seems low to me.
I would definitely smash that. I think Oklahoma just runs away with this game. I think they can cover by at least 30, even on an alternate spread. I would take like 27.
Charlie, what do you got?
Yeah, Oklahoma, go. Our buddy Daniel Lux. Daniel, I love you, buddy. You know that, and I love your connection to Nebraska. But Oklahoma, I mean, that Sooner Schooner going to be on the field a lot of times in this game.
A lot of times in the end zone as well, too. All right, let's move on to the Big Ten. Maryland, Illinois go tonight. We talked about Nebraska, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Miami. Minnesota is going to play early in Colorado, but Notre Dame and Purdue, the game there, and then Penn State at night against Auburn. We'll start with Nick on that. What do you think of the Big Ten? Those two games right there, very interesting, Penn State, Auburn, and Purdue, Notre Dame.
Penn State Auburn is going to be a great game. I actually had Penn State penciled in at -4.5. Also, I think they can rally behind the home crowd and just take this one away. I think they're very set in the trenches. Their offensive line is really good. I think they can run down, take the clock away, and I think they'll come out with this -4.5 as well.
Charlie, anything in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I'm watching that Purdue Notre Dame game closely. I think Notre Dame's being Notre Dame again. And you know what? I love Notre Dame because I used to live in South Bend, but I don't like where they're going. They're being bipolar again on me, and so I'm watching it very close. I haven't decided what I'm going to do there yet, but I got to give you the other little aside here, just real quick. Purdue has the world's largest bass drum for their marching band. And they couldn't get it through the one opening in the one end there at Notre Dame Stadium. So they asked them if they could take it through the opening on the other end where Notre Dame's band and the team comes through. And the Fighting Irish said no.
No.
I think this may have cursed the Fighting Irish. So I may have to go with the Boilermakers just because they were being a-holes about the big drum.
All right, Nick, I'll let you hit the Pac-12 here. What do you like in the Pac-12?
Perfect. So for the Pac-12, I actually really like – hold on, let me pick this one up. Yeah, so I really wish there was a spread for Oregon Stony Brook. I think we're really going to run away with that one.
Good luck on that.
Disregarding that, I'm going to have to go with UCLA spread against Fresno State. I know Fresno State looks pretty good, especially against Oregon. They played very well. But I think UCLA just looks absolutely dominant. And I think they're going to run away with this by at least 15. I think 11 is a pretty good total. But I think UCLA is going to be great.
Charlie, Pac-12?
Listen, I love me some Bulldogs because you and I called a lot of San Jose State Bulldog games over the years. I
actually don't like them at all.
I called games involving the Bulldogs over the years. So I when not playing San Jose State, I have a love for them. Let me tell you, I'm putting money down on this game, and it's going to UCLA.
All right. Move on to the SEC here. Alabama, if they're not at least a 2-touchdown favorite, something's going on in that game. They're sitting their first string and second string. If they're not 2-touchdown favorites, they're going on the road this week again. They're going to Florida, who's really good. And but they're still 14.5-point favorites, 60 points on the line there. Auburn, Penn State, we talked about non-conference game already. Stanford's going to go to Vanderbilt after coming off their USC win yesterday. But Vanderbilt upset Colorado State in Colorado last weekend as well too, and yet Stanford's still a 12-point favorite on Vanderbilt. And how about that total for Ole Miss? 76, the total for Ole Miss and Tulane. Mississippi State, a good defense. Memphis scores a lot. Mississippi State, 5.5-point spread. Nick, the SEC.
I love Ole Miss in this matchup. I think 14 is a perfect spread. I think they can beat Tulane by at least 18. I think this is going to be a high-scoring one as well. I don't know if it'll hit the total, but Ole Miss looks fantastic. I think they can easily run away with this one at home by minus 14. And also, kind of not a full game spread, but I'm taking the halftime Alabama at minus 7.5. Their offensive line is just fantastic. They got some big boys out there in Alabama, and they always just tank down the middle, and they just run down everyone's throat. So I think Alabama is going to take this first half by maybe 14, and I think it'll come closer near the end of the game, but I think the first half is very good.
They always start out strong, Charlie, and then in the second half, you always wonder if you're going to cover that 21 or 22-point spread for Alabama at the end, because sometimes it comes down. The Miami game, a perfect example of that 2 weeks ago. What do you like in the SEC?
You know what? I'm really looking at that Stanford Vandy game, and I kind of like Stanford with the minus 12. But I'm also looking at the over-under on that game. That's an under 48.5. I know Vandy beat Colorado State, but Colorado State's a whole different animal than Stanford. So I think Stanford will be up after the win over USC. But I think that was a bit of an anomaly too. So I'm kind of looking at that game. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do the spread or do the over-under. If I do the over-under, I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I really like Penn State. I'm looking at Penn State very strong. I think they've played well this year. Big Ten teams generally do not have an easy time with SEC teams, and Auburn has played pretty well so far, but Auburn not in the upper echelon, in my opinion, in the SEC as well, too. Georgia coming off their last week big win after their previous week win against Clemson in opening week. They have South Carolina, 31.5-point spread. I know South Carolina is not very good, but that's a lot of points to be given up. And, of course, Alabama is always on the radar when you talk about SEC football. They're going to go against Florida, 14.5, the point spread tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to make a difference to buy the half a point, but I feel better at a touchdown than I do at 14.5 for some reason, especially late in the game. Who knows? Who knows how that goes? All right, the Power Five out of the way. Let's get to the American Conference. Really, the only game to talk about in the American Conference is the Cincinnati Bearcats. They have Indiana. It's a pretty close distance, I would say, in terms of traveling distance, and it is a little bit of a rivalry. I know when they play basketball against each other, even though they're different conferences. Cincinnati, red hot, number 8 in the nation in the polls, 3.5-point favorite at Indiana. Indiana came out looking horrible against Iowa, played better last week. They're 1-1, but Cincinnati, after that 7-0 deficit to Murray State last week, ripped off 42 in a row. They're really good, Nick, and I like Cincinnati, and I like them to be able to hang in with you. The other one I like is Ohio State, obviously coming off their game against Oregon last week. I'm going to feel bad for Tulsa because clearly their defense is going to be a lot better than what it showed last week. Ryan Day has obviously made it a point in his press conferences this week to talk about defense. They know they have the offense. They know they can score, and poor Tulsa.
I 100% agree on that one. I think Ohio State's putting up at least 49 to 56 points.
No doubt. The other game in the American, Memphis scores a lot of points at home. They're 5.5-point underdog to Mississippi State. We talked about that in the little one. Then Ole Miss said 76 points is the over-under on Tulane. So, but basically right now the game, Cincinnati, Indiana, Charlie. What do you think about that? I know you follow that. I know you follow those two programs pretty closely.
Yeah. By the way, distance-wise, a little less than an hour.
Right.
Between the schools. It's really interesting to me that Cincinnati's only a minus 3.5 in that game. They keep wanting Indiana after Indiana had that big season last year to be better, I think, than they are. And I want Indiana to do well because, I want more Big Ten teams to challenge other than just Ohio State and Michigan. I love it that Northwestern's kind of gotten in there and Wisconsin over the years. This is going to be a Cincinnati game. I'm sorry. It's going to be a Cincinnati game. They're pumped up. All of a sudden now they're going to be a Big 12 team. They're ready to rock. And I like that one a lot. And just to jump over for a second, that Ohio State Tulsa game, Tulsa lost their opener to UC Davis, which is a Division 1A AA team. Okay, I know that you know what I mean, folks. It's that division championship series. It's a Division 1 AA team. And so here comes the train. So don't even get involved in that game.
Very good in terms of the Cincinnati Indiana game. I'd be interested. Desmond Ridder is very underrated. He's not getting a lot of Heisman talk, and he should get a lot of Heisman talk. But again, they're going to go to the Big 12, so maybe he won't be there. Unfortunately, when they'll be there. But he's the type of quarterback that somebody needs to promote in their program for Heisman Trophy candidacy. And if he somehow moved this team up into the top 5 or top 6 with a couple more wins in the American Conference, where they play the competition, not great in the American Conference. I guess Memphis would be the best one that they play. All right, the last one, the Mountain West that we have, Charlie, San Jose State, very late night on FS1, 6.5 points at Hawaii, 61 the total. We talked about Fresno State, UCLA. I like UCLA a lot, 11.5, 63. Fresno State, boy, they played well. They did play well against Oregon. They blew out Connecticut. But right now, I just got to think that UCLA's defense is playing well and UCLA running the ball very well. Don't sleep on Air Force. Don't sleep on Air Force either. Air Force, 9-point favorite. They've got Utah State. Utah is going to San Diego State. San Diego State coming off a victory over Arizona last week. They were an underdog. They're at home. Utah had a tough game against BYU, which could go either way for that Pac-12 team because I like Utah's defense a little bit. 8.5 might be a lot for San Diego State, though, from that standpoint. And then the other one in the American that I'm looking at, we talked about Nevada and Kansas State a little bit, but a little bit more on Nevada being a road favorite for the first time in a few years, especially at a Big 12 school. Kansas State looked really good against Stanford. We saw what Stanford did last week, but Nevada Reno 2-0 has had a pretty good start to their season, Charlie.
Yeah, I like Nevada Reno. Actually, we're not supposed to call them that. We're supposed to just call them Nevada. But I like them. And I think what we've seen from Kansas State, they don't understand what's happened there either. So if you're involved in that game, take Nevada. Let me just go to San Jose State and Hawaii. I never get involved on games being played in Hawaii, especially on visiting teams, because they get to Hawaii and they all go, "Where's the beach?" Okay, they just lose their minds. Okay, you look at the history, go back and look at it, and you go, "How did that team lose in Hawaii?" It's because they lose their minds and go to the beach. I'm telling you, it's just a mindset, and they start hanging loose. So stay away from those games. I just like that. San Diego State. I love San Diego State, but you're right. That point spread there, that looks a little big to me.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so for me, I actually like San Diego State first half. I think it's set at -4. I think they're gonna kind of take Utah a little by surprise and maybe win by a touchdown, at least be leading a touchdown by half. And also, I'm really all over, like you said, don't sleep on Air Force. I really like Air Force, -9.5. They looked fantastic, and I think they're going to control the ball the entire game, and I think they can come away by 9.5 as well.
What do you guys think about Boise State, Oklahoma State? Oklahoma State can run the ball, but Boise State has looked really good in their first 2 games. They they nearly beat UCF in the first game of the year on the road. Then they came back and they lost that game, and they came back and won. They've had a week off. Oklahoma State 2-0 so far in the year. That game going to be on FS1 preceding the San Jose State Hawaii game in Boise. We know how crazy Boise can be, Charlie, from our Mountain West days, the blue turf and everything like that. Do they have the offense and do they have the wherewithal to stay, not to stay with Oklahoma State, but to hold on to Oklahoma State and cover that 3-point spread?
Well, I have to tell you, every time I have gone against Boise State at home, I've gotten burned.
Yes.
You know, I mean, there's something about,
and it's only you, by the way. Nobody else gets burned on Boise State. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it's just me. No, there's something about getting on that blue turf that just makes teams lose their minds. And I'm not joking around here, folks.
No, I know.
I'm being very serious. They play well at home. It's a good crowd. They always have a good football program, folks. It's not just the curse of the blue turf. And I'm always hard pressed to go against Boise at home. And they're tough. It's a well disciplined program. So I haven't decided if I'm going to get involved in that game. But if you ask me who's going to win, Boise.
All right, Nick, what else you got in the Mountain West? Anything else in college football before we let you go?
I actually agree with Charlie on this one. I'm all over Boise State, and they actually have one of the most dual threat receivers who can just do it all in Shakir. I don't think people talk about him enough. He actually already has 12 catches for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he looks pretty dominant. So I don't think Oklahoma State's going to be able to stop him. So I'm taking Boise State as well, and I think that's going to be my play of the week as well.
All right, well, we'll have our picks by 6 Eastern today for baseball, tomorrow by 11 Eastern in the morning for college football, and then noon Eastern on Sunday for the NFL as well, too. All right, thank you to Nick Robinson for coming in and give us his unique wagering angle and prop bets and in-player games and the player props. He's all over it. How have you done so far, by the way, for the viewers and the listeners?
I've actually done fantastic. I bet a lot on CD Lamb last Thursday, and that did well. And I actually took the teaser I was saying before. I actually love teasers. That's one of my plays of the week this week, and I'll tell you guys about that tomorrow. But I took a teaser last night of the Giants plus 9.5 in the over of 34, and I thought that was free money. So
yeah, it was free money as it turned out. Nice job there, young man.
Good job.
All right, Nick.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
We'll see you next Friday, 1:45 Eastern. Come back in. Give us all your unique angles on wagering and prospering. Have a good weekend. Good luck with your games. Don't forget to give me your picks so we post them on the social media, your social media as well, too, So how can people get a hold of you on social media?
Perfect. So, yeah, I have a Twitter link that's at Nick Robin Sports and Instagram that's Nick Robinson 4. So look me up on Twitter. I'm always tweeting about my picks and who I think is going to play well this weekend. And thank you so much for having me on, and good luck to everyone.
All right, Nick. We'll see you next week.
Have a great weekend, man.
Take care. All right, Charlie, when we come back. Welcome back. I was doing my own producing there. I was going to thank Nick Robinson first before we went out, but the Friday Football Show, sponsored by Britannia Arms of Cupertino, celebrating 40 years in Silicon Valley. Check them out at BritanniaArmsDeanza.com. Thanks to everybody on Facebook Live. Want to give some shout-outs to some people here. Frank and Susan, thanks very much for joining us on Facebook and on the YouTube channels as well. To everybody. All right, we did not get to the baseball lines. We're going to hit the baseball lines real quick because the Friday Football Show took up a lot of time, so we'll hit them right now. The National League games we're looking at: Colorado, Washington, Marquez, Gray, Philadelphia, New York, Wheeler, Walker, Miami, Pittsburgh. In Miami, Hernandez, Eliezer Hernandez, Will Crow. Dodgers at Cincinnati, big series for the Dodgers. Walker Buehler, Luis Castillo, big series for Cincinnati as well, too. Milwaukee with a magic number of 5 will host the Cubs this weekend. Adrian Hauser trying to round back into form against Zach Davies. 225 from Milwaukee. A little high, but they're ready to clinch the National League Central. 9 the total. And after watching the Cubs yesterday against Philadelphia, you got to think that may be the way to go. The last 2 games, big games in the National League. St. Louis, San Diego, Miles Mikolas. Vinny Velasquez gets released 3 days ago by the Phillies. He's in the rotation right away for the Padres. 123 for St. Louis. 9 the total. Mikolas had injuries first half of the year. He's pitched well, coming back in the second half. See how he goes tonight against the Padres lineup, who seems to have woken up last couple of days in San Francisco. And speaking of those Giants, 168, a little high maybe. We'll see against Atlanta. 8 the total. Logan Webb, the best second half pitcher, definitely for the Giants, and maybe one of the top 5 in all of baseball this entire second half. Ian Anderson, who did not start yesterday because of the rain out against Colorado, goes for the Braves tonight. A big 3-game series for the Braves against the East. All right, Charlie, what are you looking at in the National League real quick?
Shoot, man, I don't know. I'm going to have to sit around and take a look. Obviously, I'm looking at that Giants Braves game. Taking a look at that. Let me see here. we were talking so much football, I kind of lost.
Yeah.
Dodgers Reds game. I'm gonna watch that one pretty close. I'm also gonna, one game I'm gonna look at pretty close too is that Cleveland Yankees game.
Yep.
I like that pitching matchup between Plesac and Kluber. So that's caught my attention as well. And then also the Phillies Mets game, just because that game is so important to both of them. And so I think that could have some interest, because I think there's going to be some hard playing there. And I kind of like the odds there. I like those low odd games. I'm not at this point in time, I'm not looking for low hanging fruit. I'm looking for something that's going to pay off.
American League schedule: the Yankees, Corey Kluber pitching against his former team. Zach Plesac going Toronto 210 versus Minnesota 9.5 with Ryu and Pineda. Tampa Bay, their magic number 8. Patino versus Casey Mize. Detroit actually playing better, but they lost game 1 of this 4-game series. This is all the new series for the weekend. 8.5 the total there. The White Sox 190 at Texas. Dylan Cease had a pretty good year. Taylor Hearn, the left-hander for Texas. They just got actually they took 2 out of 3. They lost 2 out of 3 to Houston this week against the Astros. In Kansas City and Seattle. Seattle playing for that second wildcard playoff spot. 107 the total for KC. 8.5. Brady Singer and Cress Flexen. Last one on the board, the Astros trying to clinch out the American League West. Magic number 10, 225 the total. 9. Brandon Bielak versus Madison Bumgarner in Houston tonight. We still don't have the 2 games on the board yet for Oakland and the Angels. The Angels haven't announced a pitcher after Ohtani got sit down. Check back with us by 6 Eastern. We'll have our picks and we'll have the updates if we have the pitching matchups as well. And the Red Sox do not have a listed pitcher against Baltimore either. That's a big series for the Red Sox as well, too. All right. Thanks to everybody. Don't forget, every day, 6 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday, we'll have our picks and latest news, all our social media pages. Don't forget to check out our Facebook social media group page, Make the Money and Run group page. It's got 240 members in there now. So we appreciate everybody being in there, and please feel free to check us out online as well. Don't forget to download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Britannia Arms, we thank you as a sponsor. 40 years, a celebration this year. BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. Don't forget to keep checking our social media sites. We'll have all our picks up for the Friday baseball today. We'll have all our college football picks up by 11 o'clock Eastern tomorrow morning. And then on Sunday, we'll have all the NFL picks up by noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So we'll get you the latest news. We'll get you the latest lines. We'll get you all the topics that need to be talked about for college football as we hit week 3 of the NCAA and week 2 of the NFL. All right, Charlie, we ran a little bit over, but thanks again for coming on, as always, and always being a good co-host and helping us with this as well, too. So have a great weekend to you and yours.
You do the same. Going to be a fun weekend. Lots of sports.
Lots of sports to talk about this weekend as well, too. All right, I'm Vasi Vadaparty for Charlie O. Thanks again to intern Nick Robinson for his weekly segment. Have a great weekend. The Make the Money and Run podcast for September 17th, 2021. We will see you on Monday at 3 Eastern, and keep checking our social media for our picks as well. Take care. Have a great weekend. Good luck with all your